All right, so we're in our last Sunday of our prayer series. We're leaning into the last of the 28 days that if you've been getting the text messages, I've been looking forward to every morning at 7:30 getting that text message as another reminder of God's goodness and another reminder that, hey, there's a way for me to participate, not just by myself, but as the body, knowing that everyone is receiving that text message at the same time. Ideally, we're all praying about the same time too, about some of the things that God has laid on our hearts, and that's amazing, right? And just knowing that we can do that is a blessing, and knowing that the technology has brought us here is amazing to me. So as we kind of wrap it up today, here's what I want you to think about. Imagine that you're at a crossroads. You actually come up to a crossroads, and you have multiple paths in front of you. And you look down each path, and each path seems to have some potential. But as you kind of look down the lanes and look through the choices, you're like, oh my goodness, there's potential, but there's also risk. And I really want to decide right. Maybe you're in a crossroads right now, and you're actually trying to decide between a couple of job opportunities. One feels safe. One is predictable and financially secure. But that other one, it's risky. It feels risky and it feels uncertain. And you're just not sure which way that you should go. But here's the thing, it's risky and it's uncertain, but it's fulfilling. It's something that you have been longing for a very long time. Or maybe you're just in this place where you're trying to decide, you're trying to navigate through some tricky relational stuff. Should you speak up and risk having conflict, or should you stay silent and protect the peace? See, we've all been there. We've all been at these places, these crossroads, where the stakes are high, and the path forward, it's not clear. And here we are, we're at the crossroads, and we're looking up to God, and we're saying, God, here's what I need you to do. God, I need you to make a bright neon sign that blinks and says, this way, dummy, right? That's what we need. Because life is filled with big decisions, and it's filled with small decisions. And each one of those build up and stack up and shape our future. I mean, think about it. Maybe you're in this spot now, or you have been in the past. You're trying to determine college. Where am I going? Am I going? What one is the best one? What's my major? And you have this decision that's in front of you, and it feels big, because it is. We have a job opportunity. It's one, we feel safe where we are. We're comfortable. We have all that we need. We're kind of frustrated with our boss, but it's no big deal until it is. But then we have this other opportunity. And it means that we're going to have to stretch and grow and do something bigger and more and different. Or you're at a place where you're having this conversation, and this conversation is looming. I mean, you've been happy being boyfriend and girlfriend. It's been fine. But you want more, and you think it'd be a whole lot better to be husband and wife. And so you have this define the relationship conversation on the horizon. I mean, you have these decisions, big or small, and you have them even at the grocery store when they say paper or plastic. And you're like, I don't know if I love the environment enough to go with paper. See what I did there? That's horrible. All right, so here's the deal, though. We want to make the best choice. We want to make the absolute best choice, but there's a little bit of a default that happens inside us. We have this default setting. And we begin, when we have these choices, to ask questions like, what feels good right now? We look at something that seems daunting and we go, okay, well, what's the easy option? We have that conflict that's kind of looming, and we say, well, is there a way to reduce this conflict? And all the while, the question that kind of circles around us the whole time is, will it make me look good? See, these questions, while they're ones that we're very comfortable in asking, they're not the ones that bring the best results. Because sometimes the easy path is not the best path. Sometimes what feels good leads to a lifetime of regret. Sometimes that best decision that you made, you look back years later and you go, what was I thinking? I mean, have you looked at your pictures from high school? Listen, you're not alone. We desire to do what's best. Every person desires to do what's best, to know what is best, to make the right choice. And we want to make decisions that lead us down the path to good things. Because every single one of us want fulfillment, purpose, and peace. We want fulfillment in our lives. We don't want to live as though that there's something missing. We want to be fulfilled. And we don't want to just live thinking that our lives don't matter. We want purpose in our lives. We want to be assured that what we're doing matters. And above all, we just want peace. We don't want that unsettled feeling of, gosh, I think I chose poorly. But you know, the great news is that we're not left to figure this out on our own. Now, there's no secret decoder ring. It's not like we're going to say, hey, today look under your seats. We got that secret decoder ring you've been wanting. You know, you can throw the magic 8-ball out the door now because you got the ring and it's ready to go. That's not what we're talking about. Those things aren't going to help, but I want you to know the key. The key to knowing what's best is knowing God. And when you know God and when you understand who He is and who you are in light of Him, that means that His love is abounding in your life. And if God's love is filling your life, if you are being transformed from the inside out, we've talked about this before, right? If you're being transformed by the love of Christ, it changes the way that you think. It changes the way that you see the world. And ultimately, it changes what you do, how you decide, the level of understanding and choosing. And this is what Paul prayed for in Philippians chapter 1, verses 9 through 11. He said, this is my prayer. This is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and in depth of insight. That your love may abound in knowledge and in depth of insight, so that you will be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and the praise of God. Paul's prayer begins with a call for love. Not just any love, not just, hey buddy, how are you? You doing good kind of love. Not love like we say, I love pizza or my car, but agape love. This selfless, unconditional, this love that reflects God's heart. And this love is not fleeting. It's not an emotion. It's not a fleeting emotion. It's not a feel-good sentiment. This love is a love that changes people. This is love that changes our situation. It's love that changes lives. I mean, think about it. When was the last time that you felt deeply loved? When was the last time that you felt like somebody had deeply loved you? I mean, it might have been through your parents' quiet sacrifice, giving you a better life than you maybe would have had otherwise. Maybe it comes through a friend's timely encouragement. Maybe it's the kind of love that your spouse gives their unwavering support when you're going through difficult things. This love that's not conditional, this love that is in the core of who we are as Christ followers, that love has a way of making us feel seen, a way of making us feel valued, a way of making us feel safe. But you know, God's love is deeper than that. And Paul is praying this kind of love, that it would abound in our lives. That this love would come and fill our hearts and overflow out of our hearts. Because that kind of love changes how you think, how you live, and what you do. It's like marriage. I mean, marriage is truly two selfish people that said, hey, I think you're kind of cool, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And you got two selfish people entering into a relationship where they soon figure out that this relationship will not work if we are both being selfish. And so those two selfish people have to learn how to be selfless, how to put someone else's needs ahead of their own. I mean, you had children, and you got a selfish little thing that doesn't know how to communicate anything, and all it says is, I want this, right? And then you're looking at it going, gosh, you're so selfish. Why don't you get a job? It's not, no. But you're looking and you're saying, okay, it's my job to care for them. It's my job to put my needs aside and to put their needs ahead. It means that your needs go to the back of the line. This kind of selfless love that we kind of see happen in marriage and we kind of see happen in the parent and child relationship, that kind of selfless love is a reflection of the love of God, the kind of love that changes us, shifts our focus, and shapes our priorities. Now, we take this kind of an experience of this love between a husband and a wife, this love between a parent and the child, and then you take it and you place it on a divine scale. And you figure out that God's love at work in us changes every bit of who we are from the inside out, our hearts, our minds, the way that we view the world. And when our hearts are changed, our actions are changed. So Paul prays that this kind of love, this love that is from a changed heart, one that has been changed by the work of Christ and the Holy Spirit inside, that this kind of love that comes out into the world, that comes out to one another, that it would abound. And when this kind of love abounds, it abounds in knowledge and depth of insight. This love that grows if it grows without knowledge, it turns into sentimentality. I messed this up in the early service. I can't say that word, sentimentality. I was going to change it, but I didn't. You know, when I write these things, I think, yeah, I can say that. Obviously. Okay. This sentimental type of love is well-meaning, but it's misguided. If we have knowledge without love, we can know all kinds of things about God. We could have spent so much time in his word that we know all 66 books in order. And we can recite them. And we can almost tell you what's in each one of them. And we have all this knowledge, but what we figured out is that this knowledge, it made us have to struggle with something else, pride and arrogance and a critical spirit, because we begin to think that we know more than somebody else does. Paul said, I want you to let God's love fill you so much that it overflows into wisdom and understanding. Once you experience this love of God so deeply and it transforms how you see the world, it begins to make sense that hopelessness, where you once felt there was no hope, well, now there's purpose. This obstacle, this thing that I thought that I would never get through, becomes an opportunity to see God at work. Viewing people as problems. This person is a problem in my life. This person is making problems for me in my life. Gives us an opportunity to say, this person is someone who is loved by God. So if this love will fill us and overflow into wisdom and understanding. If that's happening, Paul says that will happen so that you may be able to discern what is best. If you are building on the foundation of God's love. And it grows. And as it grows, it empowers us to discern what is best. Not only making good decisions, but that we would discern what is best, that our choices, the decisions we are making, that they are aligning with the will of God. Do you guys ever grow up having certain brands that are the brands that you're supposed to use? I've heard people say this about detergent, right? There's people firmly in the Tide camp, some that are in the All camp, and some that are in the Gain camp, right? Cereal, there's some that are like, hey, we're a name brand, or we're bottom of the shelf kind of people, right? Canned goods, we're standing there, we're looking at canned goods, and we're going, okay, well, this one has the same ingredients as this one. Corn. 89 cents, $1.49. Then we're trying to figure out, are we $1.49 corn people? I don't know, but my mom said that we're only Del Monte, and that's what this one is. And I don't know if that great value stuff is going to really do the thing, right? And so here we are, we're in the grocery store trying to discern what is best based on what we thought that we knew already. And you're looking at the labels and the prices, and you're not sure. And you're like, I really don't know which one is the best choice, but I can't afford to buy both of them to decide. Take that feeling and multiply it by 100 when the decision that you're facing is significant. I was thinking about this, and it's like Moses when he's standing in the wilderness with the weight of an entire nation pressing down on him. I mean, they've already come across through the Red Sea, and they're now in the wilderness, and they're supposed to be on their way to the promised land, but there are people that are just grumbly, stiff-necked, and just all sorts of out of sorts. And they're here in the wilderness, and they're getting their sustenance from God. They're getting this manna from heaven, but they don't like it. In Numbers chapter 11, this isn't the same as deciding between two different kinds of cereal. This was Moses leading a nation through the wilderness. And they had walked, and they have wandered. They've gone far, and they're tired, and their feet hurt. I mean, think about the last time that you walked all day. You're standing there, and you're like, gosh, it's finally time to sit down, and you sit down, and your feet are throbbing and aching, and your muscles are twitching a little bit because it's been a long, arduous walk. And there you are feeling that as a person. I mean, it's kind of like when you park at the back of the parking lot and you say, come on, kids, let's go inside. And about halfway through, they're like, leave me, just leave me. I can't make it, right? I mean, these people aren't happy. They're not ready to be this kind of people because they're just not ready. They start thinking about this manna, and this manna, I mean, it just shows up, and it literally means, what is it? And they're like, what is it? I don't know. You should probably eat it. I mean, I'm not sure how that works, but that's what they did. And here they are eating this bland meal that gives them all the nutrition and everything that they need. But there's one problem. They started dreaming about recipes. They started dreaming about, you remember back in Egypt? You remember back in Egypt when we were there, and we were doing hard stuff. I mean, it was really hard, making these bricks and stuff like that. But man, we had fish. We had fish, we had cucumber, we had melons, we had garlic. Wouldn't you like some garlic on this? We had onion. And they start complaining because their appetite is not satisfied. Their unsatisfied appetite made them grumble and complain. And this grumbling wasn't just a murmuring. It wasn't just a kind of like, oh gosh, I mean, I'll eat the manna, but I wish I had some salt. I don't know. It was overwhelming. And Moses is bearing the brunt of it, and he knew he couldn't provide them anything else. They were screaming out, just give us meat, we're tired of this manna, and he knew that he couldn't do it. And he began to question. The people's complaining led him to question whether he was doing enough. Have you been there? The questioning, the complaining made you begin to ask and wonder, is God's provision sufficient? So Moses, he cried out. He cried out to God and he said, why did you give me these people to lead? God, why? I mean, kittens. I could have liked kittens. God, where am I supposed to get the meat? God, they're complaining. They want this, but this burden, it's too heavy. It's too heavy for me. I can't do it anymore. They're harsh complaints. This man that's making these hard and tough decisions, just the logistics of leading these people. Did I mention they're stiff-necked? They're stubborn? I mean, it's all too much. So Moses says to God in verse 14, he says, I cannot carry all these people by myself. To which God is going, finally. The burden is too heavy for me. To which God says, yes, it is. And then the one taking the complaints of the people then begins to complain to his God. He says, if this is how you're going to treat me, this is how you're going to treat me, he says, just kill me. I mean, if you have any goodwill towards me, God, just kill me now. Don't let me see, don't let me face the destruction of it all. God, don't let me see it all crumble. God, don't let me face my own ruin. Have you been there? Have you looked out and said, God, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. If you have any love for me left, God, would you just take me now? Because it's about to all fall apart. Moses felt stuck. He was trapped between the needs of the people and his own limitations. We've all been there. In the middle of his frustration, in the middle of his doubts, God told Moses, he said, hey, knucklehead, you know those 70 elders that you've already figured out? Get those guys together. Get them together to help carry the burden of leadership. Get the elders together to carry the burden of leadership. And oh yeah, by the way, I'm bringing the meat. God said, I'm bringing the meat, and I'm not just going to bring the meat for one day. I'm going to bring the meat for a whole month. It will be so much meat that they're going to get sick of it. They're going to have, you've been to those Brazilian steakhouses, right? You know, you get the card, flip it over, you're like, more meat, more meat. This is like a meat coma kind of a thing, right? He said, they're going to get so much meat, it's going to come out through their noses. And Moses hears this and he's like, yeah, but I think this is kind of a big deal. And I think this is actually a little bit too big, maybe even for you, God. I just wanted to give you a little status update, if you don't mind. God, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's about 600,000 men on foot. And that's not even counting the women and the children. So God, I'm not sure if you've paid attention to what's going on here. 600,000 people on foot, then the men and the women, or the children and the women. God, I don't know if you know this, but this is more than even the Golden Corral can handle on a good day. It would take God more flocks and more herds than we have. It would take more fish than there is in the sea that we could pull out on any given day. And so God asked a question to Moses that challenged him. He said, are you going to trust me? Are you going to trust me completely? Verse 23, God says, is the Lord's arm too short? Moses, do you think I can't handle this? God says. Moses, do you think that my power is somehow limited by your mindset? Moses had to decide, is he going to trust God to do the absolute seeming impossible? Or was he going to let fear? Was he going to let doubt paralyze him? So like Moses, we sometimes face these overwhelming obstacles. The stakes are very high, and we are unsure how we are supposed to move forward. And so we start asking the questions like, do I have what it takes? Really, if I'm going to move forward, can I do it? What if it fails? What if I fail? Is God really going to come through for me? And when we face these challenges that are well beyond our capacity, God invites us to trust in his limitless power. When we are overwhelmed by the weight of a decision, when we're overwhelmed, God will remind us that he is able. He is big enough to carry that burden. And when we doubt, he asks us to step out into faith. He asks us to leave our fears and those things that are paralyzing us behind and to step out in faith and trust him that he will do more than we could ever imagine. And when it feels too big, God invites us to follow him more. When it feels too big, God says, maybe you don't know me that well. You should know me more. You should trust and know that he provides. I mean, you've seen it. You've seen God provide in your life. You've seen God do amazing things. You know you can trust him. But to trust him more, you have to know him more. Knowing what's best starts with knowing God. When that love abounds in us, when that love of God through Christ, the work of the Holy Spirit begins to abound and overflow out of our hearts, it changes the way we think. It changes the things that we see. It changes the things that we do. Our decisions are no longer driven by fear. Our decisions will no longer be made on what's easy, what's convenient. And our decisions will stop being made by comparing somebody else to ourselves. These decisions are guided by the wisdom, purpose, and peace of God. So when you're faced with obstacles, with the decisions of life, you can have peace knowing that God makes himself known. And as God makes himself known by his abounding love in you through Christ, he will make all things known to you. And all that you need to do, all you need to do is have a humble heart that abounds in his love, and he will give you the knowledge that you need. He will give you the insight for your decisions. You're like, well, that sounds great, but where's the magic 8-ball? Where's the decoder ring? I mean, I need something a little more. Well, God gives us clarity through his word. God's word is just not ink and pages. It's living, it's active. It's not just a list of rules. It's just not a nice little story. It's a guide for life. Psalm 119, 105 says, God, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. And when we spend time in his word, we begin to see the world through God's eyes, through God's lens. And we gain an eternal perspective. And it changes everything. It changes the way that we approach even the most daily decisions. So God speaks through his word, and God speaks through prayer. If you're still in the spot where you think that prayer is just this one way talking at God, come to realize it's a two-way conversation, but you got to stop talking long enough to listen. And when we take time to listen, God gives us direction in subtle yet undeniable ways. I mean, think about it. I mean, in prayer, you should be honest with God. Be honest with God because he's not intimidated. He's not intimidated by your thoughts. He's not intimidated by your honesty. He already knows your thoughts. If you're wrestling with big decisions, during prayer, and you're wrestling and you're talking to God about these decisions you're trying to make, and in that prayer, if a sense of peace settles over one option, you guys, that peace is not random. It's God guiding you toward what's best. And third, so he talks to us through his word, through prayer, and confirms through godly counsel. Psalm 15:22 says that plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. God speaks wisdom through others. He speaks wisdom, and here's our caveat, okay? God speaks wisdom through those who walk closely with him. Clarity can come from trusted mentors, can come from pastors, can come from Christian friends. I mean, think if a friend encourages you to take a leap of faith, without even thinking about what's going on here. I mean, if a friend calls you and tells you, hey, you need to take a leap of faith in something that you've been hesitant about, and they remind you that God can be trusted, that God continues to provide, and remind you of God's promises. And their words have been confirming what you've been sensing in prayer, and you still want a neon sign. As we know God, abounding in his love, we gain knowledge and depth of insight. As we continue to grow in our relationship with God, we abound in his love and we gain knowledge and depth of insight. And so how do we know if we are abounding in his love? How do we know if God's transformation is actually taking part inside of me? Well, first, our questions shift. We stop asking what's easiest. We stop asking what's most convenient, because we are no longer just simply looking for the easy way through, the one that's going to get us what we want, how we want it, when we want it. And we start asking what aligns with God's will and what brings him glory. Second, our trust grows. Even when it means leaving comfort for something uncertain. Even when it means stepping out of a place that has fish and onions and garlic into a place that just has stuff that meets your needs. God calls us forward into his promises, even when you feel uncertain. Number 3, God's love shapes your perspective. That selfishness, that I'm out for me, looking out for number 1, which is me. Your perspective shifts and you begin to see God is at work. You see his hand at work. Where you would have thought that it was hopeless and helpless, you see that God is making a way. The path of hope doesn't always look like the easiest path, but it is the one that will transform you. And so when we are thinking that we're at a path, a point where things could go very good or very bad, yet we're not leaning into what we know about God, what we know about his goodness, his provision, that he will be with us, that he will never forsake us, that he is alive and active and growing and changing our hearts so that we see the world differently, that God is transforming us. The path that God has us choose always leads to us being transformed into the image of his Son. Let's pray.